All right. I believe this means we we are come on. We are live. There we go. I'm real good at what I do. The show is always the utmost of professionalism, and I am good at camera-ing. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka SomeGadgetGuy, as we're going to be breaking down the top tech news stories of the last week, free of annoying leaks and rumors. No iPhone 14 here, no Galaxy S22 there. We've got some actual stuff that we can kind of actually really talk about, like tech in news, tech in politics, and then I can share some of my credit card bill woes as we look forward to eventually going hands-on with some real expensive products coming up. He has a face. Oh, ball. It's like every week. So I mean, just to let you know, like every episode of this podcast, I add something that makes the plumbing more complicated, from advanced microphone modeling and noise cancellation to image tracking, different cameras, different plugins, different ways to route all of this stuff. And it's always like getting into the last minute of the pre-show. Who knows what's gonna work? So everybody, I hope you had a fantastic weekend, had a little downtime, little time to unplug. I'm very tongue-in-cheeky this week when it comes to the title of this podcast and some of the frustrations that I've had in some of this tech commentary. I think we've seen very clear evidence of just like the hype machine, the hype train that needs to be built to sustain a lot of our favorite gadget commentary, and it's built on this whole notion of novelty. That as soon as the product is actually available to average consumers, that product is now a dead topic. You know, once the normies can talk about it, well, we tech enthusiasts need to move on to the next rumor, and that's kind of a bummer. So I've got some fun stuff that's going to be coming up on the channel. Some really cool. I got to be careful because I'm on 2 embargoes right now, so I got to be very selective about what I say. But we're going to have some really interesting things to talk about that are not just rumors and leaks. And so, especially for this podcast, kind of leading into this whole week of crazy production that I'm going to be jumping on, I think we'll have some fun. We're going to have